Right. Apologies, we were in executive session, but then also had some technological difficulties. I need a motion to come out of executive session. Thank you, Mike. Second, Lynn, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. I just want to acknowledge that we were in receipt of a contract, a draft contract from Chris O'Connor, and that we are going to have council review it, and we'll be asking the staff and the firm to be providing additional information for us as we review the draft contract so we can come to some conclusion. All right. As we mentioned before, we had made a motion to move the agenda, to move the nomination for chair and for the different officers and appointments of committee up on the top of the agenda. So at this moment, I'd like to ask for a motion to open nominations for chair.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second? Nominations?
Chair, at this time, I'd like to nominate Diane Enion for chair for the Ulster County IDA.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Lynn for vice chair.
Okay, we'll
Lynn Archer.
All right, we'll do that when we get to the officers. Okay, thank you. So noted. No. Thank you. Any other nominations for chair? No? Okay. Motion to close nominations for chair?
I'll make that motion, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Rose, we need roll call, right, for the vote for the chair?
Diane Iden,
Yes.
Michael Ham,
Yes.
Lynn Archer,
Yes.
Steve Kelly,
Yes.
Rachel Silverman, Rashida Tyler,
Yes.
Costa Mahal,
Yes.
So moved. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to working with everyone. It should be fun. We'll make sure we have fun along the way as well. All right. Might I please have a motion to open nominations for vice chair, assistant secretary, and assistant treasurer. This is the officers for the board.
I'll make the motion for Lynn to be the vice chair, Lynn Archer.
I'll second. I'd like to nominate Rashida for assistant secretary.
I'll make
I'll
that
second it.
Yeah, second. There you go.
Great. I'd like to also nominate Rachel Silverman for assistant treasurer.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All right. Any other nominations?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay. So do you have to do individual for each one, Rose?
no, the whole thing is one resolution, so you would keep going through the committees, right, Joe?
Typically, we do it all in one vote unless there's a contest for the particular
Okay.
position.
All right. So we have Vice Chair Lynn Archer, Rashida, Assistant Secretary, and Rachel, Assistant Treasurer. And now I do move to the appointments for the committees. Correct, Joe?
I'm the treasurer.
Well, that's part of the committee. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. For the governance committee, I would like to appoint Mike Ham to chair the governance committee.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any second? Thank you. I would also ask Lynn Archer and Kostub to serve on the governance committee with Mike. I would like to put forward Steve Kelly as chair for the audit committee. And Rachel Silverman and I will serve on the audit committee with Steve.
I'll make that motion.
Great.
Second it.
Thank you. And then for Finance Committee, I'd like to appoint Rachel Silverman as chair, and by our bylaws, everyone on the board also serves on the Finance Committee.
So moved. Second it.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Do we go through roll call on this as well, Joe?
Yes.
I'm sorry, and maybe I missed it, did we put someone in for treasurer?
Treasurer is automatically the chair of the Audit Committee.
Very good, thank you. Yep, got it.
And Mike Ham, because he's here, there's no vacancy, Mike will continue on as secretary.
Diane Einen,
Yes.
Michael Ham. Yes. Lynn Archer,
Yes.
Stephen Kelly,
Yes.
Rachel Silverman. Yes. Rashida Tyler.
Yes.
And Costa Bahal.
Yes.
Congratulations, everyone. We officially have our Board of Officers, and welcome again, officially.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to move into the rest of our agenda then. We need to do approval of the minutes. So I would like you all to look at page 3 of your packet and take a few moments to read the minutes from the May 18th regular meeting.
I don't know how we can really approve these. I can only abstain. I wasn't at the meeting. I mean, I read them, but that doesn't mean that I was there to say that they're accurate.
Yeah, as per the new board, I make a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting with the old board.
All right. Second? All in favor? Yeah? Will that work, Joe?
Yeah, if you have two votes, presumably the two.
Yes,
votes
we
are-
just, yeah.
We'll get that in the records.
Okay.
We'll just have an explanation.
Okay.
But point of clarification, you can still,
Review.
you can still review it and make a motion to approve them, but whether you were there or not, correct?
Absolutely. I can understand people being uncomfortable voting on them, and I've seen that. I've also seen people vote on them even though they weren't there, with the assurance from the other members that they're an accurate and complete record of what transpired. The important thing is that we have something in the record to reflect that we took action and that we have a complete set of minutes.
All right. We can move on? We're good? Okay. Next agenda item are financials on page 11 of your packet. Rose, anything that you want to highlight or call to our attention? Especially since it's the first time folks will be looking at them.
Yeah, I guess there's that. So there's
Yep.
not generally too much activity, except for the beginning months of the year, or if we have a project that has just closed. But to bring your attention to the activity that we did have so far for this month, there's the project admin fees pass-through line. It typically matches the project admin fees expense pass-through, and that, in this case, is just for Loki Grill. So that's the construction monitoring firm that we use, and we collected the money out of our escrow from the projects that are currently being monitored, and then we paid Loki Grill. So that reflects the money in and then back out. For the month of May, the administrative staff fees were $14,575. The office expense was $37. The insurance is for the year. It's not just for 1 month. Then the seminars and conferences, it would have been $50 that was paid for the IDA workshop put on by the NYS EDC. And then the travel and meals would have been travel to public, could be travel for public hearings or travel for, there was one other travel thing.
Site review?
No, not in this case. It was to the, I'm just spacing, I promise I was there.
The Albany seminar.
IDA peer group
Yeah.
in Poughkeepsie. That's what I was trying to think of what they've been calling it, but it's the peer group. And then there's interest income. The interest income is abysmal, but I'm sure everybody is aware of what the issue is. We do currently have, if you flip to page 12, we do currently have one CD. The only reason it's one CD is because the rates are so bad. And honestly, the rate we had at Bank of Greene County in their checking, not their savings, the rate we had in their Bank of Greene County checking was higher than what was being offered in CDs, and also higher than what's offered in our main operating bank, which is just across the street from our office, M&T Bank. So in an effort to get the 0.001% more, or whatever it is, that's why their bulk of the money is in a checking. The accounts receivable is very high, it's very unusual, but the only thing really in there is, the Kingstonian. There were specific terms given to them when they closed, because of the amount of the fee and because of understanding the challenges they were facing with, pending lawsuits. The board granted them until December to pay the remainder of their fee to the IDA. Typically, that's paid upon closing, but there have been times in the past as well that the board has granted leniency over a given number of months or up to a year.
And what's the
Which is
percentage?
outstanding.
The $442,000.
Oh,
It's the bulk of the fee.
Oh, I
They
see.
paid approximately $100,000 down, in December when they closed.
So is it more than 90% that they account for this amount, or it's less than that?
They're the whole.
They're the whole thing.
There's
Okay.
I would say they're 99%.
Okay.
Okay, there's a couple $1,000s of late fees for projects that didn't report back to us.
Okay.
That we'll go over at the governance committee meeting when we go over the projects that didn't do, that they were supposed to do for annual
Sure.
reporting, and a couple annual fees, but those fees are no more than 1,000 to 1,500
Okay.
fees, so you can see it's literally the Kingstonian in that account.
And what is
Rose-
the due date in December for that payment?
I believe it's 12/15.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Rose, on the, I don't see any legal fees in here.
Mhm.
How come we haven't paid any legal fees?
I'm behind on getting my first quarter bills to the IDA. I'll review that.
Okay.
Typically, the legal fees, we try to get the bill quarterly or twice,
Quarterly.
or at least twice annually, yes.
And on the professional fees, then that's you then, Rose?
It's just the administrative staff, the fees that's in there.
And that's current through May.
Correct. The contracts for other services would be extra fees like Zoom, and some of the extra little things that we have to pay for. Yeah. The copies are, I hate to say free, but they're free. Then in escrow, the bulk of the money for escrow would be the Kingstonian as well, because of the length of time for their construction monitoring. There's also whatever's left in escrow for RBW and Aferia, and there's one other that's currently being monitored, Innis. And that's all based on the amount of time they said their construction period would be, and then what we calculated the Loki Brill fees to be. At the end, when they're done, there'll be a reconciliation, and we'll either owe them money back or vice versa. The accrued expenses, that got washed out finally with the June bill payments, but that was there's a CPA fee that gets passed through to the projects. It's part of what's in our project, the enforcement agency projects policy. So each project is responsible for paying a CPA or whatever CPA we choose to review the information that they give us, so that we know that the employment data that they give us is valid and that there was a professional looking at it. So the CPA fee is passed through to the projects at $100 per project to do it. That is it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Any other questions?
Do we have anything besides the Kingstonian in the pipeline that would be an accounts receivable? I thought we had.
Not
to prove
accounts
something.
receivable,
How
so
does how does
the-
the timing work when it becomes actually a receivable?
Sure. Once the closing happens. So yes, there will hopefully be Cresco Labs. That was approved last month, but that won't happen until, you won't see it on the financials until the closing, because that's when the invoice date is.
Okay. And will we be able to see that in advance, so even though it's not obligated yet, we would have some idea of forecasting for cash flow, what that would look like?
No, I mean, we could tell you what the dollar amount is, but it's not put into the financials, because sometimes these projects, I know I told you it's not typical, but there have been projects that have taken years to
Years.
close. It's not like it's always 1 month later and there was a weird one. Like, it could be 1 month, 6 months.
Yeah, there's not
2
consistency
years.
in that.
And that's a typical problem all IDAs have
Yeah.
is how to budget their revenues.
Right.
Because there's really no assurance that a matter is going to close, and when it's going to close.
Well, it may not show up as a recognized receivable, but from, as we're doing planning, we shouldn't assume that everything's not gonna close until it doesn't close. We should assume that it's likely to close and give some probability to it, and then, at least we need to be able to have that to make decisions about financial matters. We need to know kind of what's in the pipeline that is not reflected in the financial statement. So there's work in process that is not shown here. So maybe we need to have something like that shows projects in process and approximate timing of closing.
So we could add, so there is a report that Joe presents, you'll see shortly, that talks about the pending transactions.
Yes.
We don't, it's very rare that there's more than one pending transaction at a time, so I think it would make, pending transaction after board approval, waiting for closing. Like that we don't typically have more than one. There could be maybe two, but it's not like there's usually 10 or 12 that you have to keep track of, right?
Okay.
So maybe that's something we could add to the pending transaction list, is just the dollar amount after the approval, because I don't think we would want to have the dollar amounts before approval.
No.
Because that's not why you're approving them, obviously.
It should be easy enough to do on the pending list. Okay. All right.
And for my edification, the zero under application fees, that represents that we did not receive any applications in May, or that's another
Correct, yeah, there were no
None received.
applications
Okay.
received in May, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rose. Can I have a motion to accept the financials as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Lean, were you the second?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
All right. On to Chair's report. So, again, welcome everyone new to the board and returning board member. Just a few things I wanted to share today. First, I want to thank the board for participating in a 5-hour education orientation training session Friday afternoon, on a beautiful Friday afternoon. The group came together to really start to learn about the IDA, some of the nuts and bolts, and what our work is and the scope of our work. So I want to thank you all. You all will and are required to go through a formal training by the state within the first year of your appointment. So as Rose shared with you on Friday, that should be happening probably, if the past is any indication, in the fall. So you'll be going through that training as well. I just wanted to share for me some of the priorities that I think there's a lot of important work that we have ahead of us in the next coming years. And I also want to acknowledge that the previous board, I think, laid a really strong foundation for us in terms of all the policy review and some of the other work that was accomplished over the tenure of that board for the 2 years. And so I think in many ways we're in a strong position to work from some of that foundational work. But for us, a priority, no surprise for the IDA, is we had a moratorium on housing, and we continue to, as an IDA, explore and define what our role will be in helping with the housing crisis in Ulster County. We are not the singular solution, but we are certainly part of that solution. And I'm looking forward to this group working on what our policy will be for housing. To that end, I'm putting together a working group on housing, and that group, I'm asking Mike Ham and Steve Kelly and Rashida Tyler to be participating in that working group. And part of their work will be to continue researching, meeting with key stakeholders and understanding the issues around housing in the county, and then coming back to the larger board for further discussion. And the second priority for me is public education. I think that it's really important that the IDA really be able to explain and work with the community. And to that end, we will be focusing on public education, helping the public understand what is the IDA, what do we do, what is our mission, what is our scope of work, why an IDA. And I think that's really something that's really important for us to do moving forward. And so I'm asking another working group to come together. And I'm asking Rashida and Rachel and Lynn to be on that working group and again, come forward with a plan and strategy on how we will get our message and also build relationship in the community and with the public. And to that end as well, another important priority is building relationships with the county executive office, the legislature, local towns and municipalities. We are doing all this work in partnership and for Ulster County and the residents of Ulster County. And I believe building those relationships are extremely important for all of us, not just the IDA. So they will be areas of priority for me. And I just welcome the opportunity to work with all of you on that. And I'm sure there will be other things that we'll be focused on and we'll need to focus on. But I think for the next few months, these are important priority areas for the IDA in addition to the ongoing work that we do from month to month. So thank you. Rose, I'd like to turn it over to you for the CEO report.
I really struggled to write the CEO report this month, because it's so different. I'm not telling you exactly what's going on from last month, because that's sort of irrelevant, right? There's not really too much to report on this 1 month worth of information that's going to be important. I think the most important thing is the momentum, and I hope to see the momentum that I feel the last board created continues moving as it had, and that, you know, continue to, I don't know if we want to add more policies, because we probably have enough now, but continue to, you know, constantly come back to the policies we have and certainly improve them as we go. Over the last month, you know, we had the board training last week for 5 hours. I appreciated the opportunity to be able to help you all through that with Joe. And then the only other thing coming up for this month is an IDA peer group meeting next week. The topic will be on labor policies and prevailing wage. Some of the IDAs don't have labor policies, which I find kind of interesting, but we do. We've had one for years. That's certainly not a new policy. And I know it's something that all of the IDAs have to really look at, because right now there's a prevailing wage law that had just passed. Let me rephrase. It had passed a while ago, but it was going to take effect this past January, and it really affects all IDAs because, number one, the rules aren't really set in stone. The intention was to set up a group to make the rules, a kind of like a committee that oversees what does this law mean, and the committee then wasn't put into place until just recently. There's a lot of vague language, so I know attorneys are having a field day with trying to figure out what exactly the government is looking for. But one of the most important parts is that if a project is funded more than 1/3 by public funds, which is now also to include IDA incentives are thought to be public funds, then they have to use prevailing wage. We don't necessarily, it's not going to be necessarily every project that comes before us has to use prevailing wage. It just depends on the ratio. So for example, just one easy one to call out would be like the Kingstonian, had that passed now and closed now, they would be subject to that because more than 1/3 of the project would be public funds. And it's not just IDA incentives, right? That includes state grants, that includes everything that would come from public funds.
Does
So
that include tax abatements?
yes.
So
Yeah.
the tax abatements, the value of the tax abatements?
Yes, so that's now included as part of the funds calculation. The issue not the issue, trust me, there are lots of issues with the law because it's written so vaguely. One of the larger issues was trying to figure out 1/3 of what dollar amount. Is it the full project amount? And now does that full project amount include something like the IDA fees? Does it include, what exactly is the project amount? Is it the cost of the building? Is it the cost of everything? The law really wasn't written well, and I know I can't remember the word. I wish I could because it would make you all laugh, but there's literally a made up word put into the law. So it was really maybe not written as best as it could be, so it's been a struggle to try to understand it. So I was looking forward to going to the peer group to see what everybody else's takeaway has been so far, and I think all the IDAs are gonna face the same challenges that we're gonna face. What is exactly does it mean? But I do know that we're at least lucky to have Mike Ham on the board, and he has very much paid attention to it, and I think seriously knows more than a lot of the attorneys that we've spoken to know about the law as well. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. Now we'll move into committee reports. Now that we have our new audit chair, but I think Rose, maybe perhaps you could present the construction labor monitoring report and briefly describe what this is.
Sure. So on page 13 is the construction labor monitoring report from Loki Brill. They typically send us 3 different reports, and then this is the one that's meant for the board. It's not that there's anything hiding, it's just like more detail in the other reports. In the email, then, they write the percentages. I do remember off the top of my head, and so I'll tell you in a second. We had discussed, and then Diane, of course, this was all kind of in limbo over the last couple of months as we were trying to figure out what was going to go on with the board and what positions were going to be. Diane and I had started to discuss maybe getting a little bit more information in this board report for you all, as opposed to having it like scattered amongst different pieces, because for her and I, we can see that there was 82-ish% compliance this past month, which is acceptable because it has to be over 75%. But you can't see that in what you're looking at. So it's 100% compliance for the month is what they had on here on this piece of paper. But the 82% is the overall since the beginning of the project. And that's what matters, right? We're not asking the project to be 100% compliant every month. We're asking them to be over 75% for the life of the construction of the project. So the compliance is that 86% of the workers that were, 86 of the 86 workers on site were from Ulster County or the contiguous counties, which are like the 6 surrounding counties. Off the top of my head, it's Sullivan, Orange, Dutchess, that general area. Don't ask me the rest of them right now.
And that's defined as each employee's.
By their driver's, so it's based on their physical address where they live. Loki Brill, for this project, is only coming and checking themselves and checking driver's licenses as spot checks every other month. The last time we renewed the contract with Loki Brill last fall, we decided that every other month really wasn't enough because we felt like the reports were really varying. So it seems like, and it could be coincidence, but it seemed like Loki Brill came and all of a sudden the numbers were much lower. And then the following month when the project reports for themselves, the numbers were much higher. So the board decided at that point to go to monthly, having Loki Brill come in. That was an option originally when we had first signed on with Loki Brill, but the board was very sensitive, I think understandably so, very sensitive to what the cost was to the project, because clearly having someone come in and check more often is going to cost more. And so the board really wanted to make sure that they weren't overburdening projects with undue costs. And now it seems that it is necessary, and so it is just going to have to be something that the project will pay for. However, it didn't go into effect for projects that had already been under monitoring. So Loki Brill only checks Innis and RBW every other month. Once the other projects that have closed finally start having their construction, like Aferia, Kingstonian, etc., they will be checked monthly, and they will be paying monthly out of what we calculated for escrow.
So how does that work? They go to the job site and
Yep.
see an employee and
They ask, they
demand to
say,
see their license or
yeah, they say,
something?
Mr. Kelly, let me see your license, please.
And do we do other types of monitoring, like payroll registers, which would have that same information? We could look at all of them.
So they look at, there's a written report that they get. I could show you, I could send you out copies of the binders that we get at the conclusion of a project showing all of their data. But that's just for the construction. When you're saying payroll, you mean just payroll for construction?
Right.
Right. So they look at all of that, all of the information provided by the construction employer, or the GC.
There's no said certified payroll on some of these private jobs.
Right, because it's
That's the
not
problem.
union.
There's not a certified payroll?
Not on the
So it's just prevailing wage, but not certified payroll?
There's not necessarily prevailing
We wouldn't have
wage.
that problem, but you take a job like Ennis is a
Right.
privately funded job, okay, so there's no said certified payroll, like, if I went into the office,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to FOIL their certified payroll.
Joe.
Right.
It wouldn't be as easy as I was doing, say, a throughway job.
Through a job, you just certified
That's
payroll and that's it.
Done. Correct, and I know you understand all that, and the thing is on the private work, I have to go through different multiple FOIL attempts to figure stuff out. So part of the Loki Brill thing with the licenses and the copies of everything, and we've known for past histories that, guy says, hey, I'm Bob Thompson, but he's not Bob Thompson. Okay, so that's why that got included with Loki Brill. There was a couple new things instilled upon Loki Brill as we moved along, and it was a learning curve, and I thought it was a great, Loki Brill was a great asset to this board.
Yeah, so through the audit committee last year, we looked at what was reported and not. And Steve, I would, suggest that Rose can show you what we actually get and maybe make some determination if you think that there'd be more information that would be helpful for the board to see on a regular basis, then certainly we can include that in the monthly reports of the board. So some of this is new.
Judgment, I'm just trying to understand.
No, that's why I'm saying to see what we put in place and what we did change the requirements and what we're asked for under contract for reporting, to get a little bit more insight into what was going on at these different projects.
Yeah, I think it'll be helpful to understand whether they're looking, and I'm sure they're doing it right, whether they're looking at the end of the month or they're looking through the month.
That's over the entire month. There were 86 workers for the month, and 86.
Well, were they 86 each day, or at the end of the month? were they
86 different people throughout the entire
Entire
month.
Okay.
Yeah,
They-
Lynn.
Yeah, it may help just to put this in context. When someone applies for a pilot, they get a credit for labor. And this is to ensure, this is kind of our due
Right.
diligence to ensure that they're bringing in the labor they committed to because they already got a point or two on the UTEP. So
Right.
this is all kind of ensuring they're doing what they promised, just for those
Thank
that
you.
this may be new for them.
And so this is just for the construction, or this is for
This
the?
is
Just
just for
construction, just
construction.
construction.
They also check to make sure there's the proper insurances. One of the
Workers'
recent
comp.
changes, we want to make sure they have their OSHA cards. Just want to make sure, they even check the auto insurance for the contract.
It's the biggest,
Yeah.
that's the biggest checkoff.
Yeah.
A lot of people operate underneath faulty workman's comp.
And then as far as checking the actual employees on the job, once the construction is done, then it's no longer Loki Brill. That's what we do internally, and it's part of the annual reporting that the projects give back to us. And that's part of having the CPA look over their payroll journals, their NYS 45s, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Rose. Thank you. Finance Committee, I don't believe we have anything to report out of finance. And Mike, anything from governance?
There's been no activity in governance. We were waiting for the board to change over, but trust me when I tell you, we'll be scheduling a governance meeting.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. Joe, status of pending projects, page 13, everyone.
Right, and thank you, Chair. And actually, it's page 15 of my materials for pending projects.
14 and 15.
I was looking at an old draft of the agenda.
And the enforcement is different from. Which one are we looking at, Joe?
15.
Yeah, it should be page 15. At the top, it says pending transaction
Right.
list. Yep.
It was.
So that's a list of pending transactions, and Steve, gets back to your point about what our quote inventory is.
Yeah.
Wildberry Lodge has, and I'll go into more detail, that has been a quote pending project of the IDA for some time. They're still working on their environmental reviews, so that's, and obviously the economy has impacted the development and the timetable of that project. So that has.
Where is that?
That's a hotel in Naples.
Joe-
It's the amusement park there.
I want to just add, sorry to interrupt
okay.
you,
Mhm.
but I know it was something that the old board would constantly ask, and I figure you would all want to know. They do still intend to come before the IDA. They do still intend for the project to move forward, and they're hopeful. It's just obviously stuck in the processes, and I know COVID has also helped slow it down. We did also tell them, just so that you all know, they had their public hearing resolution on, the resolution was on May 9th of 2018. Because it was so long ago, we did let them know that when they come back, we will go through that process again, because it's important to keep the public up to date.
Things often take a long time in New Paltz.
Yes.
The other concept that we've discussed, and I think, Madam Chair, you might want to be thinking about this, is that when we do an approval for a project, we put a timeline on it, a 1 year or 2 year, and a number of our other IDA clients have done that.
And then have to come back
so
to
that we don't
review if
have
not. Okay.
stale projects sitting on the transaction list.
Sounds like a good idea, Joe.
This is, where is it? Did he answer the location?
You said somewhere in New Paltz.
Yeah, it's the amusement park in New Paltz.
It'll be located as soon as you get off the thruway. If you're coming in and you're getting off at New Paltz, it would be towards your right-hand side, just heading back up into, I forget the name of that road.
Yeah.
There's a gas station on the
North
corner.
Putt Corners and South Putt Corners?
No, South
Right?
Putt,
Not
North
gonna
Putt
be
is on
there
the
at
other
all.
side
Oh,
of the
it's
It's
thruway.
going to be.
Oh, the other side.
Correct.
Okay. And it's the
Little
same
driveway
owners
is
of
on
Rocking Horse Ranch, which has been and
Turf
just
family.
finished being a
Exactly.
project of the IDA.
That's the principal.
Okay.
The next item is a solar project that has sat there for quite some time. The next item is Romeo Enterprises, the automobile dealership. This started as an IDA project. It moved over to a CRC project. And if you look at the CRC financials, we closed on that last month, and the CRC collected the fee for that transaction, and so that won't appear on this transaction list for your next meeting. Bayside Marlboro is a housing project that has been slowly moving through the process.
Who's the
And
principal on that one?
on Bayside?
Baxter.
Yep, Baxter.
Okay.
And then the last item is the Cresco Labs project to be located in Ellenville, and I think you all know about that project. And what we'll do is I'll add another column to this table with a project cost and an estimated admin fee.
We only want to have the estimated admin fee once they've been approved.
Approved.
Right.
Right.
Can you estimate closing dates or no?
Well,
It's almost been a long time.
when they give them to me, yes.
Yeah.
And I've actually asked Cresco because we hustled that through the approval process at their request. My best guess is that is a fall of this year transaction.
It is a few months. It's not typically very quick afterwards.
Work.
There's
Lots of
there's
paperwork.
a lot of paperwork is an understatement. I stopped getting them finally, but they're literal books this big of closing documents. So I
And
like the PDFs.
For each of these projects, do we have like do we have any documentation for like each of these projects?
Yeah,
And-
there's documentation on every single one of those on the website. Applications, everything is provided on the website.
Okay.
Everything has to go up on there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joe.
Sorry, any questions on pending transactions? Okay. So then moving on to pending enforcement matters, which is my page 14. There's 3 items there, Greenhouse and Darien, I'll talk about together. Those were 2 projects that underperformed in the, under review by the IDA, and they determined that they had underperformed. We adjusted the pilot agreement to make the pilot agreement less advantageous for them. Those matters have been finalized as of actually this week, and they won't appear on your transaction or pending enforcement matters for the next meeting. So the documents are signed and completed, and those will be off. The last item number 3, is Golden Hill. We've been going back and forth with the city assessor to get some information from them about what they would like us to do with respect to any clawback for that project. That project was off the tax rolls for only 1 year. So there was a question about whether we would take any action. We collaborated and coordinated with the city. We've gone back and forth with them. They've indicated that they would like us to prepare a clawback bill. I can't do the calculation without their assistance, so I'm going back to them to get that information. So there'll be an update at your next meeting on the status of that matter. The large takeaway with respect to this form on behalf of the new members is that this is unusual with respect to most IDAs in upstate New York in terms of the level of oversight and the level of monitoring. This IDA looks at the job numbers very carefully at the end of each year and then takes, and more importantly, takes action after reviewing those numbers and making some decisions about what to do, and this report demonstrates that. And with that, I'll open it up for any comments or questions.
Any questions?
Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I'd like to say I work closely with Joe on these along with Rose, and I'll tell you what, Joe Scott and his team did a tremendous job representing this board in every one of those matters. So I just like to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, no questions. That concludes our agenda for today, so I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Lynn? Yeah, thank you. All in favor?
I.
Aye. We are adjourned.